Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I am Justin Collery. I am joined as ever by the vigilant, careful, and looking out for us all, Frank Prendergast. Frank, welcome to my favoritist part of the week, Friday, 5 o'clock, and the AI argument. I've had a bit more time this week to play with some of the AI tools, and I've come up, and you have too, and I'm interested to hear how you got on. So I'm just going to tell you quickly what I was doing. Right.
Cool.
And then you can tell me a bit about what you were doing, because I'm actually really interested to hear how you got on and what you thought of it. So I had some time off this week, and so I was playing, because I'm a nerd, I was playing with different AI tools. And what I've discovered that I'm now a triple programmer. Pair programming is a thing, right, where you sort of program with somebody else. Now tripler program. So I've been making a lot more use of ChatGPT 01 preview than I had previously. And then, I mean, the Anthropic models are just the best at developing stuff. And what I've discovered this week from playing with them is that a really good way to use the tools is you talk to 01 preview first, and you sort of describe in detail what it is you're trying to do at a high level, and it maps it all out for you. And it's really good at the long context, big picture stuff. Really, really good at that, right? And it sort of goes into that. But then once you get into the nitty gritty, the details of the programming, then you just start a new chat with Claude. And you go, here, I'm working on this piece of code. Can you help me write it? And then you sort of figure out all the bugs. And you do all the sort of the in the weeds stuff with Claude. And then you go back to 01 preview and you go, right, here's my code. This bit's done. What do I need to do next? And it takes you through it. And so it's almost like a triangulation of how to do the code. And that works really well. Really, really, really well. So that was what I was playing with this weekend. You were playing actually with what I think is more interesting stuff. So you were playing with, not with Omni Parser. I think you might have done some stuff, but you're also playing with computer control.
Yeah, Anthropic's computer use. So I mean, on the show last week, I was saying I had, just managed to get it set up using Docker in a kind of a safe environment, a little test environment. But at that point, all I had managed to get it to do was crash Firefox because it couldn't get past the cookie pop-up. So after the show over the weekend, I had a chance to play with it a bit more. And I gave it a head start. So I logged in on the test environment and I opened up the MidJourney new web interface. Yeah. And then I prompted it I said, look, create an image for me. And I told it what kind of image I wanted. And it said, oh, I can't do that. First, it said, you need to use Discord for MidJourney, and I don't have access to Discord. And I was like, no, that's outdated information. You can actually now use it on the screen I have open. And the conversation basically went on like that. MidJourney's interface is not the most intuitive interface. So every step of the way, it was like, oh, okay, I can see now that you have the website open, but I don't know where to prompt. And I was like, well, you prompt in this box here. And then it was like, oh, it's not working. And I was like, no, it is working. You've done it. It's just that you have to press this button now to see the results. So literally, it was a bizarre experience of just talking it through every little step. And then what happened was we between the two of us, we got there. So I didn't do anything. I just kept telling it what to do. Between the two of us, we got there finally. And then the fascinating bit was that then I was able to say, okay, cool, we've done it. So now, what image do you want to create? Come up with something, prompt MidJourney, analyze the 4 options that come back, modify the prompt if the options aren't good enough, choose your favorite, upscale it, and let's see what you come up with. Then I sat back, and because now I had talked it through every single button and every single step of the way, it just went through the whole process, and it just went through the whole thing and did it, and created an image for itself. And there's nothing mind-blowing here in terms of you might say, yes, that's exactly what it's meant to do. But what was weird for me was that experientially, the experience of doing that was very, very odd. It was definitely, like we said last week, it's a glimpse into the future. But also, I have a tendency to anthropomorphize AI, but I do it kind of knowingly. I do it knowing that I'm calling, ChatGPT he, or, whatever it might be. But I know the whole time, I know this is just AI. But talking to AI having it do something, having it communicate back to you about what it's doing, and then modifying its behavior and doing something else, it makes it seem much more like an entity. And I found myself kind of, dropping into that sense of anthropomorphizing even more. And I found myself finding it harder to kind of go, oh, this is just AI, because of the fact it was now having like a real world, or a digital world at least, impact, an actual impact, and doing things. That was a very weird experience for me. And I would, I think this is the way things are going. And so I would encourage anybody who has the technical know-how, and it's not that difficult. I'm not that technical, and I did manage to set it up. So I would encourage everyone to have a play around with this, because this is the way things are going. And experientially, it's quite a strange phenomenon to do it.
I think you've stumbled across actually a really good way to do agents, right? It's an agent. You've basically created an agent there. And what you've done is you've taught the agent first interactively how to do the piece of work it is that you wanted to do. And I don't know that all the plumbing, the infrastructure is there yet, but you could imagine very easily if you just had the first part of that conversation and you sort of chopped it at that point, and that's your agent being taught how to do what it is you want to do. But from now on, going, okay, I need some images that are to do with X, Y, and Z. Can you just go off and create those for me, please? And it goes off and it comes back to you half an hour later, because I believe it's quite slow, which is fine, right? But it comes back to you half an hour later and said, yeah, here's your image. But that's an agentic use case, right? You've just perfectly described everything that's required to create an agent. That's brilliant, Frank. You're leading the way here.
And I will definitely admit as well that, like, I've always, one of the reasons that I explore AI is because, right from the beginning, the Sam Altman quote of like 95% of what marketers do will be replaced by AI. Right from the beginning, before he even said that, I could see that this is probably the way things are going. And seeing something like computer use actually performing tasks on a machine, which is basically what I do all day. It makes that fear, it makes that same fear that little bit more real.
Well, okay. There's no need to worry about it. Like, that's just the future. There's no point to be worried about the future. But it is a good. I think you totally distilled the future perfectly. Like, it's a nice segue into another news story that came out this week, which is totally the same, but just in a different domain. Which is, so Google in an earnings call this week said that 25% of all new code in Google was written by AI. Now that's mind-boggling on a number of levels. That's mind-boggling, right? It's really a really interesting insight. I think it's a good benchmark. So if you're in an IT company and 25% of your code isn't written by AI, well, you're not making the best use of AI then, because Google, would be the sort of torchbearer, right, of how to do things. Also, though, Google a couple of months ago laid off a whole load of Python developers. I think they laid off their entire European Python team, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know that those two things are related, but it feels like
put related. There,
yeah. And I think if you put together what Google said about 25% of the code being written by AI, and exactly what you've described, right, you get really powerful use cases. So okay, and so you went through a thing of MidJourney and creating images, right? But you could use exactly the same process to go and check bugs and say, oh, there's a bug that has been reported here. I need to go and check the code. I need to run the code. And we know that it can write code and debug it really well, and then deploy that, maybe have it tested by a human, and then deploy it using exactly the method that you have described. And that's what makes the technology so powerful, because it's general. So what you do, all that matters is we both work at computers all day. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, right now, for me, I have to sit there and watch it do it because I have it set up in a safe test environment, but it's available on the API. So someone like yourself could absolutely set up exactly as you described it, just to go off and do it automatically if one trusted it to go to the places you needed it to go.
Yeah, well, I think, the obvious thing to me is that you have, cloud computer, and you got virtual computers in the cloud and all these sort of things. So it's not going to be sitting running on your desktop. It's going to be a virtual computer that actually
Yeah.
has no screen at all. That's just housed in some data center somewhere. And
No,
you just
exactly.
have
Yeah.
an interface to tell it what to do, and it goes off and does your bidding. I still, by the way,
Mm.
if anybody's watching this and wants a little bit of work, right, doing exactly what you've described, I want to have an agent that looks for the best deal for gas, electricity, bins, and stuff like that. It's exactly the same use case. Just log into my
Yeah.
account, download the bills, analyze the bills, go search for the current prices, and switch me if it's a better deal. I mean, that's a really practical use case.
Mm.
And it's interesting. Do you know what screws it up?
What? You mean apart from the cookie pop-ups?
The cookie pop-ups. The cookie pop-ups screw it up. Those things, they just drive me mad. So they do. I don't know if you got another piece of news actually related to the cookie pop-ups, Frank, that annoyed me this week. It's funny, you get frightened, I just get annoyed. So this is tangential to AI, but full self-driving isn't available in Europe yet because it's not authorized. We're not allowed to turn it on in Europe, which is very annoying to me. And there was a conversation that I read, right, an email conversation, whatever, when somebody was asking, well, why wasn't it? And they were told by the Europeans that there was a law that says they weren't allowed to turn it on. But in that conversation, they acknowledged that the Tesla full self-driving system was safer than a human, right, on American roads, but they couldn't prove it on European roads, so they weren't going to allow it.
Yeah, American roads are very different from Irish roads. I don't know that I would be willing to take something that was capable of self-driving on American roads and just assuming it would be able to do our little boreens. And so I don't know much about this. I would definitely like to know a little bit more, but that would be my question too. Would be, why is it not here yet? And I suspect that given our past conversations, I suspect I'd probably end up falling down on the side of the EU in terms of it might just not be ready for here yet.
Here's my pitch, right? Right.
Yeah.
What I think is going on here is that you've got two views of the world, right? And on the first view of the world, you have the American view, which is that everything should be allowed until we find out that it's dangerous, and then you should disallow it. And on the European side, it's everything's disallowed until you can prove that it's safe, and then we will allow it. So it's sort of two different. One is everything's okay, and the other one's nothing's okay. And then you get to a sort of a point in the middle. And I'm saying that in a modern world where innovation is happening so fast, you can't afford to say that nothing's allowed until it can be proven to be absolutely safe. You have to take the view that everything's allowed. And then as we find the things which aren't safe, then we'll outlaw those.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because I do think you've polarized it a little bit more. Brilliantly, yeah. Because I think, a lot of, in fairness, I'm not saying they get it right every time, but a lot of work goes into, it's not that nothing is allowed, it's that quite a bit of work goes into figuring out what things are potentially harmful, potentially dangerous, or potentially infringing on consumer rights. And then, trying to predict those and putting regulations in place around those things, like AI. So again, I'm not saying they get it right every time, but I think self-driving cars and AI are two things that it doesn't take a genius to figure out that they could go seriously wrong. And so, I don't think it's nothing is allowed. I think it's certain things with potentially dangerous outcomes are not allowed until we figure out, are they all right?
I think you figure it out by letting them drive. Let them drive, see what happens. If something goes wrong, ban them. I'm cool with that. But I think, okay, and I'm kind of being a little bit facetious there, but I genuinely do believe, right, that in a world where, it's changing so fast, you can't regulate everything. You just can't. And it's a fool's errand to even try. So just let it be, right? And, in any case, if it doesn't work, people will move away from those products really quickly anyway. So just, everybody wants it. Just give it to them, I think it takes us on nicely to a story which you spotted during the week, and this is really important. A very good use case, a use case that's close to my heart. It was the transcription of doctors' notes in hospitals. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, so this is brilliant. I mean, this is another example of pretty standard uses of AI that could, could be going horribly wrong. So one of the examples they gave was they were using Whisper, which I think is Whisper OpenAI's
It's OpenAI, and it is actually open source.
voice to text.
Yep.
And so they're using that for the transcription. And what they're finding is that now I didn't see percentages or statistics on how often there were major hallucinations, but there are hallucinations happening, and the transcription is transcribing things that were never said. And some of them were pretty bizarre. So what my favorite example was, what the person actually said was, the boy was going to, I'm not sure exactly, take the umbrella. So those are the words that were actually said. The transcription service added, he took a big piece of a cross, a teeny small piece. I'm sure he didn't have a terror knife, so he killed a number of people. Now, it's not like it just like slightly misheard what was said. It just hallucinated. This person.
That's really interesting. People. I'd love to know more. Okay, the line that jumped out at me. Okay, so that's pretty. Okay, that's a little bit damning. But the line that jumped out to me in the article was, "The full extent of the problem is difficult to discern." But that's not going to stop them from writing an article to say how terrible it is. So they went ahead and did it anyway. I'm going to push back on 2 points, Frank.
Yeah.
So first thing is, there is a known issue, right? One is that this is it's an engineering problem, right? That can be solved with engineering. So just they haven't, it's a bug feature. They need to fix it. And there's I have seen reports in voice mode for GPT, which I'm sure uses similar tech underneath it, where it's expecting to transcribe some text, but there's silence, and it just hallucinates words. And that's a technical feature, right? That's a problem, right? And that's easy. I mean, I think that could be fixed reasonably easily. And my bigger pushback is, in general, if you were to have a human stand beside the doctor and transcribe, I think they make more mistakes. That's the bar, right? So there are some people, and they're saying, "Oh, it's not 100% perfect," and I'm saying, well, don't let perfection be the enemy of good enough, right? The bar isn't 100%. The bar is it better than a human at doing the same job?
So I'd say two things about that. I think, I agree that, or at least I will concede that it's possible that a human would make even more errors, but the errors would be slighter. So a human is never going to add that this boy killed several people because he didn't have his terror knife. That's
you're clinging on to that one big case, Frank.
But like an error of that magnitude is not going to happen with a human. I wouldn't think. And the second thing is that if a human is transcribing, that human is responsible. I guess what I'd be curious about is, in instances like this, who is then responsible? Like, if something goes wrong due to a hallucination in a medical environment, is OpenAI responsible? Is the doctor responsible? Should there be somebody who has to check every word? Are they responsible? It just makes things a little fuzzy. And I would have reservations. And it comes back to, like, all of the things that we read about AI going wrong, almost all of them can be brought back to the fact that in my opinion, right now, because of these errors, the user has to be able to assess the output. And I assume that with transcription for medical situations, the whole point is to save time, and so you can't be checking every word. Which
I'll tell you what we do though, right? Because this is why it does matter to me, right? So this is an area that I do work in, and so when we're, let's say, transcribing, so in this instance they're transcribing voice to text, right? But in what I do, it's transcribing text to text. So we're taking documents and handwritten stuff, right? And you always need oversight. And I think in the medical field, at least until something really different happens, you're always going to need oversight. So, but it's almost better in that instance to make a big mistake rather than a small one, because so long as you've got the human oversight, that will jump out and go, "Hold on, that's not right." And so long as you can jump back to the original. then you can always verify that what's being transcribed is correct. And I think in this instance where it's voice transcription, again, it's an engineering issue to me, right? After the transcription has happened, really what should happen is the AI should read back, okay, this is what I've understood you've said. And it should read back the important points and then allow the doctor to go, no, actually, this is what's really important, or yes, you've transcribed that correctly. So again, I'm agreeing with you, right? You need oversight. And I'm saying that but I still think that you had an interesting story this week about Linus Torvalds, right? The inventor of Linux. And he's saying, oh, it's 90%, it's just marketing and 10% reality. And that's a very hardcore engineering view. And what I think in this world of AI technology, you have to have a slightly softer view on the tech, which is back to my thing, don't let perfection be the enemy of good enough. So, you can now, up until now, we've been in a world where you do big software projects or you make big things and they have to be 100% correct and 100% set in stone. And I'm saying in the AI world, you've got to have, it's a little bit fuzzier. It's kind of like, well, we're going to spend 1/10 of the time making this thing and it's going to be 90% correct. So it's kind of like an 80-20 type rule. And it's kind of like, are you comfortable with that? We can make it 95%, but it's going to cost you another 20% of time. It's almost like for every 1% extra of accuracy, you're going to add 10% of time on. So you're looking for the use cases where you can, 90% is good enough. And we're going to have human oversight for the other 10%.
So I would, I think I would agree with that. And I think that's why, AI is fantastic for things like marketing. For what I do, it's absolutely fantastic because I'm constantly checking the output. I'm the expert, or the client is the expert in their content domain. But for medical stuff, it kind of it kind of changes the landscape a little bit. And it's funny, it kind of ties into another. I'm going to pop over. There's another. By the way, I started out with natural light here, and because of the time change, I forgot that the clocks went back here, and I've completely lost any light whatsoever. It is now nighttime. Since we started this chat, it has gone from daytime to nighttime. But anyway, another article that I came across that caught my attention had a quote that's, I think, highly relevant to this, because the article was about, we talked about that Apple study a while back, the Apple study that said that, LLMs do not reason. And this article was coupling that study with some comments from Yann LeCun, who was also kind of saying, and we've discussed before how Yann LeCun does not think that large language models are the way to artificial general intelligence. He thinks there's a different route. And so he was having a go at generative AI as well. But mostly he was just saying, you can't use it for everything. And his quote was, it seems to me that before urgently figuring out how to control AI systems much smarter than us, we need to have the beginning of a hint of a design for a system smarter than a house cat. And and then the article finished with a quote from the article writer saying, judicious use of Gen AI tools can mitigate disappointment. And they said, we should just let the LLMs do what the LLMs are amazing at. Don't let the LLM do everything. And I think that's kind of that's essentially what we're saying here, is that LLMs are amazing at doing certain things, but we should not be letting them just automatically transcribe medical stuff without being checked by a doctor or someone who was present at the conversation.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say, I agree with you up to the point where you said, but we shouldn't allow. I'm like, no. We should allow them. We should make use of technology. But I mean, I think, okay, I do agree. Okay. And I'm going to put it in a slightly different way, but I'm violently in agreement with you, which is LLMs are really, really good at taking unstructured data and turning it into structured data. So in this instance, right, you could have the recording of, a doctor and a patient, right? And the transcription will not all be perfect, but that's not the end product, right? The end product is, can you give me a summary of the diagnoses, the prescriptions, and the important notes, anything that was said by the patient that was important and anything that said by the doctor was important, right? So it's not a 1-hour conversation. It's a 1-page summary. LLMs are really good at doing that, right? And so as a doctor, you can look at the one-page summary and say, you missed a bit. Yeah, that's good. And move on. And that's a great use case, right? And there's real value in that because, when the next doctor comes around, they can just look at that one-page summary and they know that it's better quality than they would ever have got. And it's way more accurate. So, yeah, we'll take it as we're in violent agreement, we think. Frank, tell me this. I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, go for it. Well, I was going to say you sent me that tool. You sent me that new voice cloning tool.
Brilliant. Okay, did you now we know, Frank, that your dulcet tones from Cork are very difficult for AI to copy. And
Yes.
And so were you, and this is important. This is important because I believe there's an opening in the Marvel Studios for Iron Man. And so if we can clone your voice, right, and your image, I mean, you could be, you're an actor as well as a marketeer, and we could have you, with Scarlett Johansson in the Marvel movies, if you're going to allow your voice and your image to be cloned, because Robert Downey Jr. has said under no circumstances can he be cloned. Can you be cloned, Frank?
It would make my dual career so much easier. But I have been hunting for and now, to be fair, I'm using the instant voice clones, which say that they only need, like, I think this one says it only needs like 10 seconds of audio. Is it something ludicrously short
like that? Yeah.
So I've been trying all the instant voice clones and nothing has come close, but I still have the window open here. So let's have a listen to this one. It is so this is the problem with having too many tabs open.
Well, you're doing that, by the way. As you're that, I just want to say, is this not the dream, right? The dream is that when you're sleeping in bed, your computer your AI is out making money. And so if we can clone, I don't know what Robert Downey Jr. has a problem with that, because it sounds to me like a brilliant idea, right? That we can just clone Frank, clone your voice and your image, and you can be off making money acting while you're asleep in bed. I mean, is that not the dream?
Absolutely. Again, as long as I'm the one benefiting, I'm okay with it. Which I think, in fairness, is more or less what he was saying as well, right? He was saying, and he was saying that after he, after he died, if anyone tried any funny stuff, that his legal team would be on it immediately.
God, it's going to come at you beyond the grave. All right, Frank. Let's. I want you to talk and not move your lips.
Yeah, so this is a clip from this is a piece of text from a previous episode. So you might recognize this clip, Justin, in what is definitely unmistakably my voice, and no one could ever think that this was not me.
But for most people, I think they're going to be disappointed, because this thing is its strength is reasoning, and even more specifically, they're saying its strength is reasoning in maths, coding, and science.
So here's the thing, right? Here's the thing.
Not bad, Frank.
Well, the interesting thing is, Justin, as an actor, I hope no casting directors are listening now, because as an actor, I'm not actually great with accents.
But now you are.
But that was definitely my voice just doing an American accent. But it was definitely my voice, wasn't it? It's just, it doesn't sound like me at all because I don't have that accent. But I think if there's any parts come up now that require accents, I'll just say, look, I'll do the performance, and I have this AI tool here that can do the accent for you.
And there's another AI tool that can do the lip sync as well to the voice. So that's it. You're like, you just have to stand there, look pretty, and you're in.
Yeah, sorted. Absolutely.
That was, I have to say, right, that is actually the best voice clone. Like the accent was off because it made you sound American, but actually the voice itself did sound like you. Like it did have the same sound as you.
It did, and it had good intonations, lovely pauses. There's a lot to like about it. But it's interesting. I mean, accents are meant to be one of its strong points. So I don't know. Do I just have the most difficult accent in the world to clone? How was yours when you did it?
It made me sound British, which
weird.
I mean, some people get annoyed at. I was okay with it. But again, Again, I would say, right, that the intonation and the accents in the voice, as in the accents, as in, the exclamation marks and the pauses and so on, brilliant, really, really good. It definitely sounded like me, right? I had my voice. It was just that I sounded like I made maybe £1 million, £2 million more than I do now. Sounded like a posh Englishman. And I guess that has to do with the training data, but it's very good. And I did mine, I think similar to maybe 15 seconds of audio was what I used to clone my one.
Right.
So that's impressive.
Yeah, and it totally depends, it totally depends on what the use case is, because, if I just need a voice, it's fantastic. It's brilliant. I'll just use that Americanized version of myself. But if I need to, if I'm trying to convince somebody, oh yeah, I actually recorded this, useless.
I've got a great use case for it, by the way.
I wouldn't be doing that anyway. Sorry,
I've got a great use case. So let's say, right, we don't want to get into politics, right? But let's say, for the sakes of argument, Donald Trump wins the election in America next week, right? I think then they should clone Donald Trump's voice. And every time you ring an American department, right, as the interactive voice recording thing, it should be Donald Trump saying, "Hi, thanks for calling the Inland Revenue. Your call is really important to us."
What is this going to achieve?
Nothing, but it'd be entertaining. And it would show that Donald cares about your money.
It might cut down on a huge level of support calls.
Maybe. Who knows? Frank, we had a very disturbing AI story this week to do with a guy posting on Twitter about how he resolved arguments with his girlfriend. This is the real danger of AI, not self-driving cars, not robots that walk like humans. There was a lot of those this week. This guy, let me explain to you what he did. So this guy was with his girlfriend, and he would have arguments with his girlfriend, and he would record the entire argument. And then what he would do is he would take the entire argument and would give it to AI.
Already we're in dangerous territory here, I think.
I know, the red flags everywhere here, isn't there? So he would record the entire argument, and then he would give it to AI, and he would ask the AI to score the argument on how reasonable each party was, who was likely to be more right, who was likely to be less right, and so on. And I mean, part of me is like, I'm 100% in on AI judges, and this is a step towards an AI judge. So it seemed like a pretty good idea. So the guy did what every self-respecting guy would do that records arguments with his girlfriend. And he posted his brilliant idea on Twitter, and also posted what AI said about the argument. And you know what happened then, Frank?
What happened next?
The tweets were brilliant. His girlfriend found the tweet where AI said that he was right and she was wrong. And then the third tweet in it was the guy saying, "I'm now single." That, Frank, is the real danger of AI.
I probably shouldn't have laughed, really. It's that whole story is a little bit disturbing. I the ending of that story does not surprise me.
No.
I think, I think he might have been. I think perhaps he could have used the same technique to help him to better converse with what sounds like might be his better half.
That's very wise, though, right?
And resolve disputes more amicably. And instead, he managed to use it to get himself unceremoniously dumped. I kind of feel for him. If he happens to be listening. I'm very sorry this happened to you, but I hope that it can be a learning experience for you.
Although if your girlfriend is listening, I'd say, just like, I think you were dead, right? If somebody's recording your conversations and then sending them to AI, yeah, that in itself could have been a red flag. You should have left there and then. Good for you. Move on. Frank, as always, been tremendously entertaining. It's a very, by the way, as you said that the room gets dark, it's a very Halloween-like picture you have behind you now.
I know, yeah. We have to end this episode before I just disappear completely into the darkness.
I love it. Frank, have a great week. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Chat to you soon. Cheers, Justin.
Yeah.